beat him even after he submitted. But the fact is, even in my own experience, in the experience of many of the police officers that I know, they had Rodney King outnumbered and overwhelmed, and there was no need whatsoever to even hit him with a club. Not even once. In case you don't know what a club is, they call it a baton, a nightstick. You see, if just all those police officers would have jumped on him, they could have put the cuffs on. There's not a thing that Rodney King could have done. Those police officers, the very best that I can say about them is that they exercised very poor judgment. The worst that I can say about them is that they were racist, mean, and deserve to be convicted of something, and I think the federal government's going to take care of that. Now, I know there's a lot of Americans out there crunching Budweiser cans, telling their buddies that they should have killed Rodney King while they had the chance. I know people like that. Known them all my life. They're one of the reasons why this country is in bad shape. And until we change the minds, the attitudes of those kinds of people, we're always going to have big problems in this country and in other countries and all over the world. There just isn't any room on this earth anymore, folks, for bigotry and racism. It won't work. It won't work. And I got news for you. I think there are powerful forces at play that are going to be very, very harsh on those who think that it will work. When the trial was finished, the whole world was watching that little courtroom in Simi Valley in Ventura County, California. I was, my neighbors were. People were calling me on the phone, asking me what I thought the verdict was going to be. I told my wife that because of the change of venue and because both judges were Freemasons, that I had a sneaky suspicion that the instructions to the jury would ensure a not guilty verdict, otherwise known as acquittal. And I told my wife and several people on the phone who called that if this happened, there would be a cry of outrage that would be heard around the world, and that the blacks in Los Angeles would be out on the streets. I told my wife there would probably be riots. I had no idea, folks, had no idea that it would go to the extremes that it did, that people would be killed, beaten, that buildings would be burned and businesses destroyed, and the degree of looting was way beyond anything that I had expected. However, in retrospect, knowing what we know now, we all should have expected it, all of us, because it was a test, it was a dry run. It was engineered from beginning to finish. See, the instructions the judge, the Masonic judge, the Freemason judge, gave to the jury was such that they had no choice but to come back with the verdict that they came back with. And many jurors have tried to explain why they came in with that verdict of acquittal. And they're all explaining it wrong because they don't even understand why they did it. You see, they looked at all the evidence, and then they listened to the instructions of the judge, and the instructions of the judge is what put the evidence in perspective for them in a way that they had to come in with a verdict of acquittal. The instructions of the judge was very simple. Within the scope of the law, did they commit assault with intent to commit bodily injury? The answer was no, at least in the eyes of the law, at least in the eyes of that courtroom. Another one of the instructions was, if you find that these officers were performing within the parameters of their training, you cannot find them guilty. And according to their training, they were definitely performing within the parameters of their training, especially in the city of Los Angeles, where that kind of brutality is common. Where Chief Gates himself, before he arose to the position of chief, had been accused on several occasions of using unnecessary force on blacks in Los Angeles. Having lived in Los Angeles and the surrounding area, I have watched it happen so many times that trying to look back and count the incidents that I had seen, I was not able to come up with a number because it's just too many. I remember when I lived in Long Beach, there was a raid on a house across the street from my apartment building. And they drugged these people out. All were black. They handcuffed them and had them all laying on the ground. And every once in a while, an officer would walk over and stomp on one. And, of course, the blacks were extremely angry, were yelling obscenities and epithets at the officers. And I watched as officers drew their clubs and just beat one woman senseless. And she kept screaming. She had spirit and she had guts and she wasn't going to shut up. But she was subdued. She was handcuffed. She was lying on the ground, was no threat to anyone. And she was beat. When the men began to scream, stop beating her, then they beat the men. While they waited to haul them away. Now, I actually witnessed this from the window of my apartment building directly across the street. And this is just one of the things that I've seen over the years that I lived in the Los Angeles area. We are moving into a police state, folks. And if you don't believe that, just watch your television on Friday and Saturday night. Programs like Cops, Top Cops, 911 Cops, SWAT Cops, Women Cops, Detective Cops, Grandma Cops, every kind of cop you can think of. And when did this start? And why so many programs about cops? And why is America so enthralled with watching police bust down doors, subvert the Constitution? I mean, literally right in front of your eyes. They break down doors without search warrants. The Constitution requires it, by the way. Most of you don't know that because most of you don't have a copy of the Constitution and never read it. If that makes you angry, so be it. It happens to be the truth. And you know it. They search the house. They confiscate property. Of course, no one has ever received just compensation as required by the Constitution for the confiscation of their property. The right to habeas corpus has gone by the wayside. Now, this is incredible. We are losing our freedom of speech and many, many other things. Oh, the Fifth Amendment, folks. Haven't you read your papers? Coerced, forced confessions are now legal. If you're arrested and the police beat you until you confess, whether you did it or not, it's admissible in a court of law. Can't happen in America, you say? I say you better wake up. It has happened in America. It continues to happen. We're in deep trouble. The Constitution is in deep trouble. The Bill of Rights are almost all gone. We're being propelled, manipulated into a new world order, a one-world totalitarian socialist state that has no Bill of Rights and will have no Bill of Rights. And Americans don't even understand what's happening. Everybody feels in their gut that something's wrong, but nobody knows what's happening. Well, if you want to know what's happening, go read the Constitution of the United States of America and the articles and amendment thereof, and especially the first 10 amendments, and then look around and wake up. Wake up. This is your wake-up call. Los Angeles was a test run of implementing the police state. Los Angeles was a test run on the complete suspension of the Constitution and the implementation of the police state. FEMA took over. Now let me tell you something. California, the state of California, has enough National Guard troops that they could have quelled those riots. They could have taken care of everything themselves with no problem. They did not ask for federal troops, but they sure didn't refuse when the federal troops were sent into the city. Now, without the declaration of a national emergency, that's against the law. But Bush sent federal troops into the city of Los Angeles, and he sent FEMA to take over, and they did. FEMA's job, folks, is not to help in catastrophes, and we learned that in Hurricane Hugo. Remember when it hit the southeast coast? Remember? And the people screamed for federal assistance, and there wasn't any federal assistance to give them. I mean, nobody was trained to do that. But they sent FEMA down there, a Federal Emergency Management Agency. Sounds like an agency that's supposed to help in a situation like that, but it's not. How do I know? Because I read the executive orders that established FEMA, and in those executive orders it outlines exactly what FEMA is for. FEMA was created to take over all local, federal, and state governments, that is city, state, and federal, on all levels, all transportation, all harbors and seaports, all electricity and public utilities. And if I really read you the whole thing, you would feel chills going up and down your spine. FEMA was created to take over this country when the Constitution is suspended and America is overtly propelled into the New World Order by the traitors in Washington. I suggest you begin researching this yourself. You can start with my book, Behold a Pale Horse. And if you don't want to get my book, there's plenty of other books. All talk about the same thing, but you got to go looking for them because B. Dalton and Walden Books don't carry them. They're afraid to. You can get my book by calling Stan Barrington at 602-567-6109. That's 602-567-6109. Or you can just write to Stan and ask him to send you a list of available material. You can do that on the phone too. But if you'd like to get the book real quick, as quick as possible, send Stan $24. That includes postage and handling. $24. His address is Post Office Box 889, P.O. Box 889. Camp Verde, Arizona, spelled Verge, Camp Verde, Arizona, 86322. That's P.O. Box 889, Camp Verde, Arizona,